everyone, and welcome to the Philly Factor here on LaSalle TV. My name is Paul Perrello, and we have quite the guest joining us for the next half hour. A guest because he has an interesting story. I know you see him there on the screen, Father Jim Drucker. You think, okay, he's a Catholic priest. What could be so interesting about Father Jim Drucker? Well, his life before he became a priest, and now after his service to God and to others, he has quite an interesting life to talk about now that he is retired. So, Father Jim Drucker, thanks so much for joining us here on the Philly Factor.
It is a blessing to be with you and the community of LaSalle College, brothers, sister Catholics, and non-Catholics as well. I love you all, and it's fantastic to be back on the radio. We're going to talk about that, of course, as you said. And I do want to let you know that I'm truly a Philadelphian because in the morning I drink coffee half and half. Now, there's a quick story, if I may, Paul. When I went to college in Emerson back in '64, I was working, just got out during Vietnam, infantry, finished my duty, came back to Massachusetts, took a job at electric boat company, and I went to college nights at Emerson for my minor degree. And while I was there, I was with the Fonz. Henry Winkler was my classmate. It was just Henry then.
Right.
And at nighttime, I was taking night classes. So that all the fellas, Bob Berlow, Mike Isaac, Julia, we would all get together. The first Hojos, Howard Johnson's in Dorchester, not Dorchester. And we would all go, and they all laughed at me because they would say, "Hey, Jim, will you order the coffee?" I said, "Yeah, Myrtle, bring us all a cup of coffee and make mine half and half." So anyway, Paul, I worked very hard with my professor, Mr. Matson, was now what's the technical, the producing the chief professor, and I made it very guttural. So instead of saying coffee, I made it toffee, and I started recording myself. And as you probably know, being in the media world, you really don't know what you sound like until you hear yourself on a tape recorder. That's the real you. It's not what's in here like this already, 590. So
Yeah.
we got to Howard Johnson's Hojos, and I worked on toffee. Wow. So I said, Myrtle, Bobby's having coffee. Mike's having coffee. I'm having coffee. Oh, yeah, by the way, Myrtle, make mine half and half. I had worked on the second part. So I'm a real Philadelphian from Kensington,
Absolutely. Yeah.
St. Anne.
Quite the interesting upbringing. Yeah, you went to Catholic school up until second grade, I think, and then you
I
went.
did, and then I had an encounter with a sister, but we young people were pretty tough in Kensington. So yeah, we had an encounter, and I ended up going to to Hackett School. Went from there to John Paul Jones Junior High School. We pledged our loyalty to whatever, and then I went to Edison, and I went to school with the Ecuadors, and believe it or not, the Times, who had the great hit record "So Much in Love." We used to sing doo-wop in the bathrooms. We cut classes, and we sing doo-wop where the echo is the best in the bathrooms.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Eighth and Lehigh, which has been torn down, sadly.
Yeah. I want to skip ahead a little bit because you also serve this great nation of ours as United States Air Force chaplain. We want to thank you for your service. You're actually wearing your hat there, and I don't want to jump around too much here, but so you at some point in your young adult life, you get into the business of writing songs, promoting acts. And you're a record producer. You worked at a number of radio stations before, and I don't know if it was a clap of thunder or what it was, that divine intervention entered into the picture, and you entered the seminary.
Back in my early years, I worked with Norman Joyce, who was Jolly Joyce Theatrical Booking Agency, and Norman Jolly, his father, and Van was in New York at 58 West 48th Street. They booked exclusively Bill Haley and the Comets. He actually pretty much discovered him and the Three Stooges. And from there, I met a lot of people. I met Buzzy Curtis, who was the renowned record promotion man of Philadelphia, and I helped him run the WIBG record hops. With Harold B. Childs, we had great stars coming in, Bobby Goldsboro, the Shirelles, and I would then take them up to the Geeter up at 69th Street. 69th, the Chevu. So I went from there, and I started working in radio later which I always thought was kind of a weird job because I would be promoting records like Laugh Lap by the Bo Brummels. I helped make it a hit record in Pennsylvania. Upstate secondary markets coming out of Philly, it's fourth market in the country. And I thought it, but eventually I ended up getting into it. So I was in radio. I started at WYNS. I went to WSC. I was in the movie, The Molly Maguires. I was a stand-in for the priest. I was just and I was just Jimmy Drucker for Wins Radio. I wanted to meet Richard Harris. He had MacArthur Park out. I couldn't believe it. I interviewed him for Monitor, which went on NBC Monitor. I met Jimmy Webb. So I went from there and I different radio stations. And finally, I got this feeling God was calling me. And I decided, you know what, I'll go on retreat. So I went with the Malvern League, but upstate it's the Toby Hanna group, and it was with the Byzantine Catholic group. And I'm walking around buildings with a bunch of mature, grown professional men, doctors, lawyers, and me, a disc jockey. And I'm praying rosary, and I'm saying, what am I doing there? But it was really beautiful. And I remember going to see Father Bill Jameson. He was a little short fellow. He's a redemptorist friend. And I went to confession to him. I certainly can share that if I wish, because I would never break a seal of confession ever in any way, shape, or form. But anyway, he said, meet me in the parlor. I'd like to talk with you. And so we met face to face. This is before face to face confessions. And he said, you know, Jimmy, I think you have a calling. Right. He said, normally I'd tell you to come back in a year and feel it out. But he said, just the way you're talking. So that began the new journey of checking into wanting to become, well, accepting God's calling, not what I wanted. Trust me, this is not 45 years of what I wanted. It's what God wanted. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I just celebrated 45 years, December 3rd, 1978. And when I first started, by the way, not to go on and on here, but I was checking out religious orders. And one of them was the Society of St. Paul, not the Paulists, but the Pauline. So I spent a week in Staten Island, that's where they have their binderies and the books were made. They published Sisters of St. Paul books, and they're great stuff. Great publishers, Catholic publishers. I went to West Seneca, was Buffalo. Spent a week there, and I spent a week in Canfield, Ohio, where they did at that time cassettes and video and audio stuff. And I decided that wasn't for me. Eventually, I went to see the Eastern Rite because my mother was Eastern, my father was not Catholic. It's a long canonical issue. I just followed what God was, and here I am, 45 years later, a priest of the Diocese of Passaic, and 82 years old. Just turned 82 a few weeks ago, but shh, don't tell anybody.
You look good for your age. That's for sure. So the priesthood and radio have both been very, very good to you. And now that you are retired, you have dipped your big toe back into this pond that we call the wonderful world of radio, and you are affectionately known as Philly's Doo-Wop priest. You do a show here in Philadelphia on WWDB AM every Saturday afternoon from 4 to 5 p.m. Is that correct?
Exactly, and it's simulcast
and you're getting
HD2. So if you're in your car, you can click it over one, and you hear it a little more deeper with the FM signal.
Right. So now you're getting to play the music. I mean, I say records. I'm dating myself here, but you also mentioned cassettes and WIBG, which many people don't know, stands for I Believe in God. So before it was a rock and roll powerhouse in Philadelphia, it was actually a religious radio station before it became the home of so many great disc jockeys back in the day.
Joe Niagara, High Ski Rudy McFaddy Suit, Jerry Stevens, Dean Tyler, great T. Morgan, whom I work with now on his station, streaming. I'm on two stations actually, OutsideFM.com, OutsideFM.com, 6 to 8 a.m. That's a tape show streaming, and it's all 50s and 60s. And I'm on every Saturday morning, 6 to 8 a.m. And T worked with me also. So I'm very proud to work with a lot of these people. I belong to the Broadcast Pioneers of Philadelphia, a renowned organization of broadcasters in Philly, because I'm from Philly, and continue on.
You get to play now the music that you helped promote way back when. And so it's sort of like we talk about these, full life circles, these things where we begin at point A and we don't necessarily know where we're going to wind up or what is, point B, C, or D, or even Z at that point. But here it's a full circle moment for you because you have had a wonderful career with the radio business, with producing, with promoting music, some of the greatest acts that are out there today. You enter perhaps the most important work of your life, serving as a priest and as a chaplain, and now you've been able to sort of close that loop and have come back to, dare I say, maybe your first passion in life, and that being music.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Paul. Uh, my first love has always been music. I play guitar, songwriter, producer. I took two black fellas from the renowned uh, Boss Tones. They had a hit called Bobbity Bob, Bobbity Bob, real guttural fifth hand and a high falsetto, and two white fellas from the Lydells. And I actually produced under Dark of Night at Chancellor Records, Ninth and Vine Streets, and at Avalon, Fabian, Maureen Gray, some great acts. And I cut a record with Russell Faith, who was the head of A&R Artist Repertoire, and he wrote "Somewhere in Your Heart" for Frank Sinatra, Bobby Socks the Stockings for Avalon. And I cut at nighttime this record, and it was accepted and picked up. The master was picked up by Atlantic Records.
Wow.
And unfortunately, it did not make a big hit. It became a cult hit, but I was producer of that. And then I had a group years later when I was in management at Drucker Publishing BMI, which I still have to this day. Not my no money. It's not. I don't make profit on it. It's just do it for fun. But I had a group called the Boys on Scepter Records, and we had a million seller called Timothy, and I had the flip side publishing of that. So I love working with groups, and it's been my love all my life. And of course, priesthood is what God's called me to, and I love being a priest and serving God's people, which is my role, any priest role, bishop, pope, to serve God's people. And music has just been a part of it. And I'm back on the air very happily and joyfully, rocking and rolling with Rock and Roll Reveille. And by the way, I'm very indebted to Richard Anthony, who's a dear friend, who actually started me on this. He said, "Father, this has been your dream to make." I never made Philly market, as we say in radio. I never made Philly radio. I would have if I had not become a priest. I know for sure, not the boast, but I'm sure I would have. But he said, "Why don't you follow your dream?" So he has been helping me along. And Jim DiLorenzo, I'm grateful to him for tying me into you. Publicity agent, has been very kind to help me on this road as well. And I'm rocking. We're having a ball, and I've had some great acts on. I'm going to throw the ball back to you.
The world of radio, the world of music, can be very, very fickle. I mean, you could have a hit today, and tomorrow it could be at the bottom of the charts. So when you were in this business of promoting records, writing music, and having worked in this business for 44 years, you have your ups and downs, you have your highs and lows. One day you could be riding the crest of success, and the next minute you could be, looking for where your next meal comes from, until you establish that success. In all the time that before you entered the seminary and became a priest, and times are much different, needless to say, today than they were, 40, 50 years ago. But were you ever frustrated, or were you ever willing to throw your hands up in the air and say, I've had it enough. I don't think I can do this, because it takes a certain type of person to really pursue a career in this industry. One of a career that you obviously made early on in life, before at the age of 36, I believe you entered the seminary.
I was ordained at age 36. I entered seminary at age 32, finished my baccalaureate degree, University of Scranton. I have 2 degrees there with the Jesuits. I have a master's degree, pontifical master's in with the church through St. Cyril Methodius Byzantine Catholic Seminary in Pittsburgh. And I since gained one when I came back from Desert Storm, a master's in journalism at magna cum laude, 3.7 in journalism. But getting back to the music, Jerry Gross was on my show recently. He's one of the remaining living members of the Dovels, wonderful man. And he said to me once off mic, he said, "Father, you're only," I think he said someone famous told him that he's famous, became very famous. you're only as successful as your last hit record. And that's true. Now, my
Hmm.
motif, and that's it, was not so much records, was doing all of the stuff behind the scenes, but the sadness of a lot of this, Paul, and I hear this from so many groups, is that lots of people are not of the best repute. For example, when I cut Karen, which was another record I produced, I played guitar on. We cut it. It's at Reco Art, which became Sigma Sound, the biggest studio probably in the country. At that time, was the biggest Philly, or Chancellor Cameos. When I cut the record there, I taken it to New York and I walked the streets, literally, at the Brill Building, at this building, at my home, and I finally got to Roulette Records. And I was with two of the boys, Chuck and Paul Alone from Lydell's, extremely talented, but really young men that didn't live the kind of lifestyle that I did is pretty much a decent, honest person without getting into more than that. And we went there, and Bud Ketzel, head of the A&R Artists and Repertoire, said he accepted the master. He liked the song. Dum 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 da 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 dum. If you go to YouTube, check out Karen, and the flip side, doing the wiggle wobble. I wrote that on the 15 trolley car. Kids in the United States say the kids are Kids in the United States say the Wiggle Wop was great. Kids in New Orleans say the Wiggle Wop was keen, moving all over from town to town, this dance, et cetera, et cetera. But we went there. So 3 days later, we are supposed to go back with the master. Well, wait do you hear what happens? I shouldn't talk this on the air, but it's truth. And these are the sad things of the record industry by certain people. They went to another studio. They couldn't take my master because I owned it. They went to another studio, Sound Plus, which is a great studio over in North Philly and Frankfurt Avenue, and they beat me to the punch. They took my group and told them I was sick, and they
Oh,
re-recorded the two songs. They went back to New York a day before me and sold the master, got the money up front. So here Chuck calls me, God rest his soul, he's since passed on. And he said, Jimmy, I said, yes. He said, we went to New York today. I said, Chuck, we're going tomorrow. He said, we went today. He said, we couldn't trust you. I said, what's not to trust? I paid for the session, a couple $100.
right.
Anyway, they're the negatives. That's the bad stuff. And you have no idea how many times I hear that from some of the greatest groups that have been around back in the 60s. I won't mention them. My own thing I will mention. And it's life. And maybe that's what God not planned as predestination, but maybe that's what God allowed. And that's what maybe helped me go toward the holy priesthood.
You have made some great friends in this industry, both as a priest and then in your new life as the Doo-Wop priest, Philly's Doo-Wop priest. Many of them were lifelong friends because you would help promote their careers early in their careers, but then later in life, and unfortunately, many of them have passed on. But I could just think of two or three right off the top of my head. Bobby Rydell, who was a guest on the show many years ago, Charlie Gracie, who was also a guest on the show, Jerry Blavitt, who is synonymous with not only Philadelphia radio and television, but with the music scene in Philadelphia. These were your personal close friends. And I'm sure that you could probably write a book, Jim, about all these relationships that you've cultivated over all the
2 years ago, before Charlie passed away,
years.
I went to visit him at his home, his wife, Joan, and his son, Charlie Jr., lived right next door. They've since moved from that area. And I remember popping in on him, oh, Father, come on in. He was so wonderful. Charlie Gracie was probably a better Catholic than I could ever hope to be, let alone be. And we're there. It was Ash Wednesday. So he said, Father, hop in my car. We're going to go get some food. So we went out. I said, what are we having tonight? He said, you're invited to dinner. I said, oh, fantastic. I said, we're having steak? No, he said, Father, we're not having steak. So we got back. He said, I'll tell you about it when we get back. So here we get back to Charlie's house. And I said, Joan, are we having steak? She said, Father, it's Ash Wednesday. We are having fish. Do you understand that, Father? We are having fish. I said, yes, Joan. But a wonderful man. And every year, I'm very famous for calling many of the entertainers. I know many of them. Tony Testa, the Duprees, Tony Batella, the Letterman, close dear friends. I call them on their birthdays, and I hope I don't get them. I hope I get the answering machine. And in the Eastern Rite, we sing the following, if I may be so bold. May God grant to his servant Paul Many more happy, blessed, holy years. Nam no haya iblayalita. No haya lihita. No haya lihita. No haya yalita. God grant you many years, and so forth. And one time, Tony Testicoff said, Father, what was that? I said, it's Russian, Poslovinsky, Panashimu, Peruski, and it says, may God grant you many more blessed, happy, holy. He said, Father, I sing for thousands of people around the world. I gathered my family around the phone, listened to you. It was beautiful, and I'm so deeply indebted for you sharing your priesthood and love of Christ. Another quick note, Charlie Gracie called me the January before he died. I think it was last year, before he passed on to his eternal rewards. Truly, he has eternal rewards. And he sang to me, Father Jimmy, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. This is Charlie Gracie wishing you a happy birthday. I sent that little transcript to Charlie Jr., and he was knocked out. That's the kind of man Charlie Gracie was.
We this is one of the Father Drucker is one of those guests that you wish you had hours and hours and hours to speak with because he's such a great fountain of information and his connections. And we haven't really even gotten into or scratched the surface of the music industry. But
Invite me
at the
back.
age of 82 years young, absolutely. But at 82 years young, he has embarked on this new career on the radio. And when when the man upstairs, Father Drucker, decides to call you to that big radio studio in the sky, I mean, how would you like to be remembered? I mean, because you've done so many great things in your career and over your life. How would you like to be remembered?
A man, a man who accepted God's calling, who loves. That's it. A man who
That's
loves God and loves people.
yeah.
And that's my legacy. It really is. I love people so much. And I know we're getting close to ending. I want to let the audience also know that in 1987, I recorded 9 shows that I wrote, produced, and hosted for the Scranton Diocese that are really wonderful, well produced, called the Catholic Church Unity Within Diversity. 9 1/2 hour shows that are available on YouTube. The Catholic Church Unity Within Diversity. And if I may, because I know we're getting tight to wrapping up, please listen. Every Saturday, my show is devoted to veterans, as I am one. We have Dr. Andrew Savicki with me, who's a lieutenant colonel psychologist. He's the head of the behavioral system of the prison system in New Jersey. Wonderful man, retired lieutenant colonel psychologist. He helps now, this day, very day, many veterans pro bono. My other guest is Billy Carlucci of the famed Billy and the Essentials. Maybe I go out walking after midnight along a lonely thoroughfare. Great, great song over the weekend. Great stuff. He's on with me, and I have a young lady once in a while come on that's executive producer Janine. So it's 4 to 5 every Saturday. Rock and roll reveille. We play oldies records. If you are an author of any book and a veteran, please contact me through Paul if you can, or myself, and tune in every Saturday 4 to 5 p.m. And I'm looking to get some more help with sponsors. I love you all, and thank you, Paul, for having me.
All right, Father Jim Drucker, thank you so much for being with us. God bless you. Continue to keep you well and grace you and bless you with many, many years on the radio. And I can't think of a better time than to be on the radio and to relive this golden era of radio and music. And who better to
Amen.
bring it to us than Father Jim Drucker? And we'll have to have you back on again because there's so much more that I could still talk to you about. But in this business, it's all about that clock on the wall that dictates. Again, my thanks personally. I am so grateful for having this time with you, and I look forward to speaking with you again, Father Jim.
May God bless it and make it accordingly. And God bless your audience. To whomever's listening, I love you. And may God watch over you. And make sure you get the Mass. And if you're not Catholic, at the church. And if you're not Catholic and you're thinking about Catholicism, look us up. I love you. God bless you. Amen.
Well, thank you. I can't think of a better way to end the program. So, Father Jim, thank you so much for being with us. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, check out Father Jim on the radio. We'll have the contacts up on the screen during the show, so you can check them out. And until the next time for the Philly Factor, my name's Paul Perrello. Thanks so much for being with us.